Friday night fireworks, Friday night NBA free agent frenzy. Free agency, 5 p.m., legal tampering, and then I guess, when is the official day deals can get signed? Is it July 2nd? July 3rd? They're going to do this on Independence Day, a federal holiday?
I don't remember. But that day doesn't matter.
No, because like anything else, all of a sudden these teams magically negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts with guys that they're technically not supposed to be allowed to talk to till 5 today, but by 5:01 we'll probably have a bunch of deals done.
Oh, yeah, within 30 seconds there's going to be 20, 30, 40 contracts that NBA Twitter is ready to announce. It's the biggest farce in sports right now. But, hey, it makes for a very entertaining couple of minutes on Twitter.com. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's even more fun when your team is the biggest player in free agency. That's where the Rockets are right now. They've got more money to spend than anybody else. So the excitement level in Houston is sky high, and it might be higher here than anywhere else in the NBA country right now. Should be a really, really fun day.
So I want to get into some of the things Kelly Iko of The Athletic is reporting he's hearing about the Rockets in free agency. But before we do that, let's kind of reset what became the big story in sports yesterday involving, of course, the Rockets. That's James Harden's situation with the Sixers, BK. It went from he's either going to stay in Philly or come to the Rockets to neither. The field was the answer there. Him and the Sixers working on a trade for him to leave Philadelphia, which seemingly means the Rockets are done with bringing back James Harden. And earlier today on SportsCenter, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN essentially confirmed what we speculated about yesterday, that Ime Udoka is a big reason why James Harden coming back to the Rockets is not going to happen.
I think in a perfect world, James Harden would have declined that player option, gone into free agency, and then re-signed with the Sixers on a long-term deal. But he could not be confident that the years and the money would be there for him, especially because cap space was going to probably dry up around the league on him, especially in Houston, where he thought he would have leverage. And I think once Ime Udoka came in as head coach, they started looking at the roster, what they wanted to do in free agency. I think Fred VanVleet has moved to the top of the list in Houston. And so what James Harden didn't want to get stuck was July 1, July 3rd, July 5th. He's trying to hammer it out with Daryl Morey in Philly. Doesn't like the deal. They're arguing July 8th, July 10th, and you're just dragged into no man's land of negotiations.
So what do you make of that? Because you were all over this yesterday. I agreed with you. We talked about it. It felt like for a while, Harden coming back to Houston, it's a lock. And you and I both know there were people around the Rockets who were essentially telling everybody that they kind of felt like they knew James Harden was coming back. And then Ime Udoka shows up, and all of a sudden, James Harden coming back to the Rockets, those rumors started to quiet down. And now it's not going to happen at all, and I think Woj is dead on. Ime Udoka probably stepped in and was able to convince Tillman Fertitta, who owns the team, hey, this is not the right basketball decision for where we're at.
The Rockets changed their plans. This was not a case of, the media was wrong and they just didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. No, the Rockets were dead set on bringing back James Harden, but Ime Udoka was able to convince them to change their mind. I mean, he's the only thing that's changed from the end of the season when, like you said, we were hearing nothing but James Harden's coming back to Houston to right now when it feels like James Harden is not coming back. So Ime Udoka is the thing that changed. You have the same owner, you have the same GM, you have most of the same roster, but like you mentioned, Jake, the head coach was able to come in and convince the powers that be that bringing James Harden back would have been a bad decision for the Rockets. So, hey, whether you're pro James Harden coming back or you were against James Harden coming back, you got to be in favor of Ime Udoka. He's the guy that you went out and got. He was a big-time get for this ownership group. He's one of the best coaches, if not the best coach that was available this offseason. I think 99% of Rockets fans feel great that Ime Udoka is now in charge here. You've got to trust him, his vision, his path, his direction on where he wants to lead this team, and he clearly feels like James Harden was not a part of his plan moving forward.
No, and I think it's the right move, as we covered in detail yesterday. Now we'll figure out where Harden's going to go, because it doesn't seem to be like there's an obvious landing spot at this point for where James Harden could be traded to. Kelly Iko today, and he was actually a guest on with the Killer Bees earlier today during their show. Kelly Iko of The Athletic covers the Rockets. He has basically put together a list of the things he's hearing heading into free agency. So we can go one by one here, BK, and you give your take on what this could mean for the Rockets. So the first thing is the Rockets are going to be meeting with free agents Dylan Brooks and Brook Lopez at the start of free agency.
Who should I start with?
Whichever, do you want to start with Brooks or Brook?
Which one comes first in the alphabet? I think Brook, right?
Brook Lopez versus Dylan Brooks?
Shoot. If we're going all right, this makes no sense.
Why don't you just do Dylan Brooks?
All right. I think he's coming here. And that's
Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. I think both guys are coming here, honestly. But I think more Rockets fans are in favor of Brook Lopez coming here than Dylan Brooks. I'm not too worried about Dylan Brooks being a Houston Rocket. I honestly think the situation in Memphis, getting cut in incredibly embarrassing fashion. I mean, the Grizzlies made a public mockery of Dylan Brooks right after their postseason exit. They wasted no time basically saying that guy was not ever going to be a part of their team ever again. Like, that was a big deal. And Dylan Brooks had a lot of egg on his face, from the trash talk he gave to LeBron in that series to ultimately the way his time with the Grizzlies,
Glizzies, you
came
hot
to
dog
an
guy,
end.
4th of July weekend?
I guess so. Probably down a couple of Glizzies this weekend, but I don't think that's a basketball team, so my apologies to you Memphis fans out there.
The Memphis Grizzlies, I'd like to nominate that for Champ of the Day.
The Grizzlies?
Isn't that what you said? The Glizzies? Or what did you say?
I said Glizzies, and then you just said Grizzlies, so I don't even know what I said.
I combined Grizzlies with Glizzy.
Yes.
The Memphis Grizzlies.
Is that what I said?
That's what I thought you said, but in fact,
not what he said.
Did not say that, so instead I said it. All right, go on.
I don't even know where I was anymore. I think the situation in Memphis, the way that it went down, is going to serve as a wake-up call for Dylan Brooks. I think he realizes that wherever he ends up, it's probably going to be his last chance to survive in the NBA. I mean, NBA Twitter's been making a lot of jokes since the way that thing ended up in Memphis, that Dylan Brooks is going to go play in China or just somewhere overseas because nobody in the NBA is going to want him. Now, he's a solid player. Someone's going to take a chance on him, and if it is the Rockets, I'm okay with it. Would he be at the very top of my free agency wish list? No, hell no. He'd be towards the bottom. But am I going to give up on Rafael Stone if Dylan Brooks is a Rocket? No. Am I going to say Ime Udoka has no idea what he's doing and the Rockets made a mistake bringing him in if Dylan Brooks is a Rocket? No. I mean, we're talking about a guy who averaged more than 14 points per game last year, which is actually slightly less than his previous couple of seasons. And he does something that not a lot of guys on this current Rockets roster do. He defends. Oh my God, defense has been a lost cause for this team over the last 3 years. Dylan Brooks is one of the better defenders in this league. He's scrappy as hell. He gets under people's skin. I think he can be a tone setter on that end of the floor for the Rockets, and they desperately need somebody who can guard somebody else's best player, and they desperately need somebody who's going to bring the energy and enthusiasm on that side of the court. So I have maybe foolishly talked myself into thinking that Dylan Brooks could be a good option here. Once again, not my top choice. There are a couple of other wings that I'd rather the Rockets go after, but I am not going to be pounding my table saying this is a disaster if Dylan Brooks ends up signing here.
The other big takeaway from Kelly's report is, and it's kind of already been out there, but they are going to meet with Fred VanVleet. Sounds like they've had talks. Mark Stein saying that he heard they would do like a 2-year, $83.5 million contract. Maybe they'd go to a third year. We shall see. But it does appear like the Rockets and Fred VanVleet will at least get a meeting once free agency opens up at 5 o'clock.
I'd be pretty stunned if VanVleet is not a Rocket by the end of the weekend. I don't know if it's going to happen today. Maybe he'll pretend to weigh his decision. Maybe he'll actually weigh his decision because he's a really good player. He's one of the best free agents out there. So there's reason to believe a few teams will be interested and a few teams will be making offers. But that goes to the point I was making at the start of the segment. The Rockets have more money to spend than anybody else. And I think Fred VanVleet is at the very top of the Rockets free agency wish list. I think Brook Lopez is high. I think Dylan Brooks is high. I think a couple of other guys are pretty high up there. But I think number one right now is Fred VanVleet because the Rockets need a point guard and they're not getting James Harden. So who's the best point guard that they realistically could get that wouldn't cause a massive fire in the locker room? Kyrie Irving. It's Fred VanVleet. So I think the Rockets are going to get him. If they want him, which I believe they do, I think they are going to get him. And I'm a huge fan of the fit. If you can get him on a 2-year deal, great. But if it takes 3 or 4, I'm still in favor of it. VanVleet's only 29 years old. He's got a championship pedigree. No worries about the off-the-court stuff. Great player, great leader, great mentor. He checks so many boxes for this Rockets team. And, man, I don't know exactly what the ceiling for next year would be with Van Vliet here, but you feel like year 2 or, year 3, if he does sign a longer than 2-year contract, could be pretty special with a guy like Fred Van Vliet running the show. So I hope Kelly Iko is right. I hope all of the other reporters linking Fred Van Vliet to the Rockets are right, because this would be a big-time get for Houston